not a game, it's a rants thing. It's not a game, it's a rants thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of the Jayden Bryce Show, the show where we talk about the latest, hottest topics in the world of sports. We had phenomenal football yesterday in the NFL. Can I say, like, one of the best weekends we've had in a while, and it's leading into tonight. We got another great game going into the final night of week 7. But y'all know the drill. We're going to talk about my favorite teams that I like to discuss on a weekly basis. On Mondays, we are going to get to my Dallas Cowboys going up against those Washington Commanders and getting smacked, respectfully. We are going to talk about the debacle that happened down there in Denver with the Giants. We're going to discuss some Eagles and Vikings, and then we're going to end it off talking about some 49ers because I have a lot I would like to say about the 49ers and what's going on down there under Kyle Shanahan. But it was a phenomenal weekend. I enjoyed it, and I cannot wait to get with it and talk about it with you all. But before we get into all that, as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like the podcast. Check out my podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, although I have not had those up to date recently, but I'm in the process of working on that. But I don't think I have any other housekeepings to go through. Oh yeah, this week, I'm more than likely going to have more than just 3 shows this week. There is a lot of topics in the NFL that I want to talk about, specifically from yesterday when it comes to Tua Tagovailoa and the Dolphins, and we know we're going to have some stuff to talk about with tonight's game. I want to talk about New England. I want to talk about the Bears a little bit, and I want to get to Indianapolis and the Chargers. There is just so much to get to that I am more than likely going to have more than just 3 shows this week about football. They may be short, and the other shows might be shorter than usual, but I got a lot that I want to discuss, and I'm going to just give y'all that forewarning. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get to today's show. The Dallas Cowboys, America's Game of the Week, called by Kurt Burkhardt and Tom Brady, was not what I expected. Of course, I think you all know that I predicted that the Dallas Cowboys would possibly lose this game, but it was the exact complete opposite. What should we take away from the Cowboys' performance yesterday? Let's just go ahead and start off with what the elephant in the room is, what everybody in the media knows, and there is no surprise to this aspect of the Dallas Cowboys. It's their offense. But first, I have to say on top of that, this is the best overall performance that the Cowboys have had all year up to this point. It was better than Philly, even though Philly, you can argue, better team. But at this point in the season, week 7, that performance that Dallas put on yesterday was the best all-around performance that they've put up. And let's just start with the offense. This offense is absolutely phenomenal. It is no doubt in my mind the best offense in the NFL. When you have the wide receiver duo like George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, it's not Batman and Robin. And I give kudos to one of the guys who said this in a tweet that I saw yesterday who covered the Dallas Cowboys. They were like, when it comes to George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, you're not getting Batman and Robin. You're literally getting Batman and Superman. There's no 1A, there's no 1 and 2 here. You have 1A and then you have 1B. In George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. Statistically, CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb had 5 catches for 110 yards. George Pickens had 4 for 82. It seems like, and we haven't been able to see it since, the first couple of games of the season, having CeeDee Lamb out there on the other side of George Pickens just makes the offense just 10 times more unpredictable. Because we've seen over the last couple of weeks with CeeDee Lamb being out, we've not been able to see that go ball that George Pickens, that's his bread and butter. George Pickens has been running more of CeeDee Lamb's routes when it comes to slants, crossers, and things of that nature. But we saw yesterday, CeeDee Lamb was running those crossers. So now the Cowboys have the threat of the long ball and is able to stretch the field because of George Pickens. And we know how elite George Pickens is at that style of play. And he is able to open up the field for just Dak Prescott and just keeping the defense guessing. And we saw that yesterday. And again, another element of the offense as well. Dak Prescott is continuing to pile up phenomenal games. I think in the last 4 games, he's now thrown 14 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And also, the running game was back, which is a focal point that I discussed in last week's show on Friday. I was like, we saw what Washington was able to allow DeAndre Swift to do. You should be able to get a get-right game in the run after the putrid performance they put up last week against the Carolina Panthers. And that was put on display as well, with Javonte Williams getting a buck 16 on 19 carries for averaging 6 yards per carry, and he got a touchdown and a long run of 33. And if you sprinkled in Jayden Blue just a little bit in there at the end, he was able to produce some as well. The negative in the offense specifically, from what I saw, was the lack of pass protection in this game because of the furious D-line that the Washington Commanders have. And it is their strength to the defense of the Dallas Cowboys. You had Tyler Booker. He's been out for the last 4 weeks. I want to say 3 weeks. And he was getting back in there, plugged him in at right guard. So I wasn't happy with the protection. And that has been something that has been the Dallas Cowboys' strong suit to start out this year. But I believe with the addition of Tyler Booker, get right game, because that's where most of the pressure was coming from, was the interior of the offensive line. But I think that would be better going on into the future. But that is the offense. There is no surprise of what happened yesterday offensively. Going into this game, I thought we were going to have a shootout. I knew Dallas was going to score points, but now we're going to get to the point that I was shocked about. Let's talk about the defense. The defense, yes, they played well yesterday. There is no doubt about it. I'm not refuting it. They played phenomenal. It is the best defensive performance they've come up with so far this season. Yes, it was better than the Jets. Absolutely better than the Jets. And even, they did it only for a half in week 1 against Philly. But for 4 straight quarters, this is the best defensive performance that they've put up. Granted, it comes with a stimulus package. I'm not buying into what Dallas put on display on defense yesterday. Because of this main reason, you can roll your eyes at me, but I do not care. It is the cold-hearted truth. I watched this game for 3.5 hours. Because and mind y'all, this was a very long game for some reason. Was I the only one that was watching and I was sitting there like, why does it feel like this game is taking forever? That late window yesterday specifically was like so long. And I was sitting there like, what is going on? Why are these games so long? Anyways, I digress. A little nugget there. But if you watched the game yesterday, specifically by the Commanders on offense, they had all of their receivers out to begin with. They didn't have Deebo Samuel. They didn't have Noah Brown, which is not saying much. Noah Brown is not your break-all wide receiver. But, Deebo Samuel and Terry McLaurin, your 1-2 combo in Washington, that is a big deal going out of the game. And I even tweeted on Twitter, I'm like, dude, because they ruled Deebo out, was it Saturday? And I was like, there's no reason why the Cowboys should lose this game. But the number one receiving target yesterday for the Commanders was Jalen Lane. Never heard of the guy. Nothing against him. He actually got 3 catches for 60 yards. But they didn't have all their receivers. There were a lot of drop balls, and there were a lot of misfires. Give credit to Matt Eberflus. Got to give a whole lot of credit to Matt Eberflus. He went away from the zone, and he done a lot of blitzing and man coverage yesterday. And what finally happened in yesterday's game? Dallas was able to get somewhat of a consistent pass rush. Somewhat. Not to what I would like it to be. I'm sure not what they would like it to be. And what the general media would like it to be. But watching the game, you were able to play man coverage. And you were able to get pressure on Jayden Daniels. And it was making Jayden Daniels have to move away from his spot and where he wants to throw the ball off axis. And that's just how you were getting the misfires and etc. that I was talking about before. So give credit where credit is due to the defense. Now, if I am Matt Eberflus, you got to continue to rely on this formula because of the personnel that you have. We've said it before. The time that Trayvon Diggs has been there and the time that Deron Bland has been there, they have never been zone corners. They have been your man-to-man type corner. And let's give a shout out to Deron Bland, who has been getting a lot of crap by everybody in Cowboys media so far this year. He was phenomenal yesterday. Absolutely phenomenal. If Deron Bland, if we are able to get Sharon Revel and Trayvon Diggs to get on some, well, specifically if Sharon Revel, if he plays this year, I kind of don't want Dallas to rush him just because of how do I want to word this? How important he is to the Cowboys' future. Like, this guy has bona fide Pro Bowler, second All-Pro type talent in him right now, in the future. I don't want the Cowboys to possibly jeopardize that and come back from that ACL injury by trying to push him to play this season, unless the Cowboys have a shot later on in the season where they're continuing to make a case for making a playoff push. But even with that, if he's a piece that you can plug in later, let him be that later on in the season. But for right now, you have Deron Bland, you have Trayvon Diggs. Let's lean into that play style. And with the linebackers, they were able to blitz. They were able to play without thinking yesterday. Even though in the first touchdown that they gave up, there was a little zone between Shamar James and Kenneth Murray. They screwed that up, little communication issue. But yesterday they were able to play free. They were able to fly around, and it was put on display on tape yesterday. And they were able to get 3 and outs, and they were able to force 2 turnovers. Do you see what we've been talking about? Matt Eberflus. You got to be able to call a game based on your personnel. You don't have the personnel to drop back and play coverage because you cannot get a pass rush. And they were able to do that yesterday. What else do we have here? That's pretty much it that I have about Dallas. And this is something that we can continue to talk when it comes to Dallas that I've brought up last week. The what if. Because the Dallas Cowboys have the best offense in the NFL. They have a Super Bowl worthy offense. Not even close. This is the best offense in Dak Prescott's career that he has assembled and been a part of and commanded by a long shot. And it's not even close. But if you look at the defensive side of the ball, it's like, really, what if? What if you were able to get one piece in the trade deadline? What if you would have never had to have traded Micah Parsons? It always is a what if, but if you wouldn't have traded Micah Parsons, you would have never had Kenny Clark. There's just so many what ifs on this roster to where one bows the question, can Dallas make a move at the deadline? I don't know, y'all. Watching yesterday, I really do think the Cowboys might be a good pass rusher away from being pretty good on defense. I like the defensive performance they put on tape yesterday because I trust the offense to be able to get 27, 30 points. If your defense can even do remotely resemble what they did yesterday, the Cowboys will be able to win some games. They can be scary. But again, I don't want to harp on this defensive performance yet because they got a big game next week. We got Denver this weekend. That is going to be a huge litmus test. We saw what we were going to discuss the Broncos later. I'm not going to, spoil it. But we saw what the Denver Broncos were able to put on tape yesterday. And we know that Bo Nix is able to run the ball, and that has always been the Dallas Cowboys' Achilles heel. So that's a lot to be desired. But let's move on to some Commanders, okay? I kind of got caught up in the Commanders hype last year. Going into this season, I was like, okay, you added Deebo Samuel, another element to your offense. And, defensively, they were actually pretty good last year. But, man, so far this year, their defense has been absolutely abysmal. They're not good. They got a good front line, and they are able to get to the quarterback. But that back end, specifically Marshawn Lattimore, he looked washed. Granted, he had pretty good coverage on a couple of balls that were through to George Pickens. That was just George Pickens being great. But I don't like what they have on the back end. Dallas were pretty much able to do whatever they wanted to do yesterday at the receiving core. They don't stop the run well. And it's a huge question mark. And, Jayden Daniels' mom said it yesterday on Twitter about, don't wish this on my son, but it is the God's honest truth. Jayden Daniels' health is going to continue to be a problem for the rest of his career. What was it last year? Last year, it was a rib injury. This year so far, it was his knee. And now he's done something to his hamstring. Your best, and this is the bread and butter quote in the NFL. Your best ability is your availability. Jayden Daniels so far, through the first couple years of his career, has not been available. And he's back-to-back seasons, this is where he's not going to play roughly 15-plus games. That is not a good recipe to see if you're a Washington Commander fan in your sophomore quarterback. And don't get me wrong, Jayden Daniels was part of the reason why that I was buying into the Commanders' hype because of how prolific that he can be. I don't think Jayden Daniels was good yesterday. I mean, he was average, 12 for 22, 156, 1 touchdown, no picks. There's not much I could take away from that performance because of he did not have a run game. You could tell he didn't have rapport with the receivers because there was a lot of miscommunication going on and a lot of misfired throws. But he's been pretty banged up. And defensively, and going on for the rest of the season. I trust more of the Giants being better and finishing out better than I do the Commanders. Because the Commanders' next couple games are absolutely brutal. Their next fleet of games, I heard Colin talk about it earlier, but you got Kansas City, Detroit, Seattle in your next 3 games. You still got to play Denver, you got to play Minnesota, you got to play Philly, and you got to play Dallas again. Their schedule, and even though the Giants have one too, is absolutely brutal. But I trust more, specifically on how the Giants look yesterday, and we're fixing to get into them. I trust them more going forward than I do the Commanders. I think the Commanders are going to finish 3rd and 4th in their division. I just think, as John Middlecoff and Colin Cowherd put it last night, I think the magic has run out. I just don't think they have the personnel defensively. And if they were even remotely at their peak offensively like they were against the Chargers, their Achilles heel in the end is going to be their defense, because they are not good. And that is simply put. But it was a phenomenal game for the Dallas Cowboys. Got a big one going up against the Denver Broncos. Going up this coming up week. And it is going to be a huge litmus test. If the Dallas Cowboys get a win, who knows? It may be in Jerry Jones' best interest to maybe seek an edge rusher. Bradley Chubb, Miami selling. A lot of people's throwing around the name Max Crosby. We're just going to have to wait and see how it all plans out. And the Washington Commanders, the season is starting to nosedive pretty fast. Let's get into our very next game. Now, this game, I was trying to watch this game and watch the Dallas Cowboys game at the same time. And, for me, that's not very easy to do when I don't have access to multiple TVs. So pretty much I was playing the Cowboys game on the TV, and I was having to play which specifically I kind of had it on Red Zone because I was what other game was going on? Yeah, the Chargers and the Colts. I was paying attention to that game too because I wanted to talk some Colts this week as well. But I saw how well that the Giants were playing. And I was like, what? The score was 19-0 going into the 4th quarter, roughly, if my memory serves me correct. I was like, okay, the Giants have this in the bag. Every time I turned around, I was seeing something negative going on offensively for the Broncos, and it seemed like Jackson Dart was just dealing yesterday. But the New York Giants just can't help themselves. Just when last week we were all having the discussion about, I was telling myself, okay, the Giants probably could turn a corner here. You're being pretty pedestrian since you had Odell Beckham Jr. just star-wise. You finally have a quality quarterback since Eli Manning. Your star wide receiver is out. All of these things are going wrong, and yet the last 2 weeks, you have been able to muster up 2 huge wins. You beat the Chargers on the road, or were they at home? No, they were at home against the Chargers. And then last week, at home too as well. I think they played at home again last week. You go up against the Philadelphia Eagles on Thursday night, and you have the Cam Scatterboost storyline and all these things going on, And then yesterday, you were about to get another quality win by beating the 4-2 Denver Broncos. Now, this is a Denver Broncos team that a lot of people, and a guy who covers the Broncos, he said it on Twitter yesterday. He's kind of like, you're 5-2, but yet you feel like you're 0-7, 0-6 just because how the Broncos season has gone with the inconsistencies that I'm going to discuss later on about my guy Bo Nix. My guy. I like Bo Nix, but me and him's got to come to Jesus meet sometimes. How bad was this loss for the G-Men? It was atrociously bad. Bad game management, bad coaching, all around. You can argue that this is kind of a good loss for the Giants because, number one, you're not going to win anything. You already put yourself in a rabbit hole. The playoffs is kind of like as stacked and loaded as the NFC is. You've already put yourself in a hole, so getting into the playoffs is an absolute long shot to begin with. but it's kind of like a good learning experience for your rookie quarterback and for the team as well, because, you have your rookie quarterback, everything's going fine. The Giants, they're not really used to winning and having fun in this fashion. And you have Jackson Dart, the Broncos are trying to surge back. You throw that huge pick, bad pick. You're on your own side of the field, 3rd and 5. You can argue that it was a lot of coaching mismanagement as well while you throwing the ball instead of trying to chew some clock. There's all type of components that can go into this, but it was a bad loss in the sense that you could have continued this profile that you were on. You could have been 3 and 4, fighting for a playoff push, saving Brian Daboll's job, which I want to give Brian Daboll a pass if I'm the Giants. I really do. You see how much Jackson Dart loves Brian Daboll, and you see how good Jackson Dart has been able to play so far under Brian Daboll. Even in the 2 losses against the Saints and, even yesterday against the Broncos, Jackson Dart just looks like the future. That last drive, when a collapse has been going on. Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, the Broncos, for the first time in the history of the NFL, if my memory serves me correct, I hope I'm 100% right because this is a huge stat to give out. For the first time in the history of the NFL, a team scored 33 points in 1 quarter. This loss is going to hurt Giants fans for years. Just being a part of that stat and being on the negative side of that stat is just absolutely just mind-boggling and infuriating if I am a Giants fan. It is the testament of the Giants and how they've been one of the worst franchises since 2012, since they last won the Super Bowl. But if you're Brian Daboll, even with the bad mismanagement and the lack of game management, things of that nature, I don't want John Mara and Joe Sheen and everybody involved up in the higher ups. I don't want them to take this season and the stuff that's happened and take it as a negative and move off of Brian Daboll. I think that this is the first time that Brian Daboll has been able to get his quarterback. He didn't want Daniel Jones. It's pretty evident. And he said it when he drafted Jackson Dart. He reminds me of the guy he first worked with when he was an offensive coordinator, and we're talking about the man Josh Allen. Their game highly resembles one another. So even if the season goes bad, you're 6-10, 6-11, 5-12, around that range, I would not go ahead and punt on Brian Daboll just yet. I'm scared that's what they're going to do. But even if you fire Brian Daboll, who is your hot candidate that you're going to get? That's another discussion for another day. Let's just get into the game. That drive, when all is going bad, this circle back to what I was talking about with, the final drive and Dart having a huge final drive. Jackson Dart with all the chips on the table, everything going wrong. The Broncos surge back. They're ahead. And you get this is kind of like your test and litmus test as a rookie. You're on the road, big game, hostile environment. You're in Denver, Colorado, the 4th quarter, everything's going wrong. You got this team who's surging back in a historic fashion. How are you going to respond? And Jackson Dart went on to respond. Now, he got bailed out by a couple of bad throws. He made one big throw on that 4th down, but he even with that huge 4th down play, they got the roughing the passer call, which I despise that call. That call was horrific. And also, let's talk about another call I didn't get to in the Cowboys segment of the podcast. That call on Dak Prescott when the helmet came off, that was absolutely crap job. Officials, that we cannot have that. I know Dak Prescott is starting to get the Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady treatment. You're the vet, you're going to get the majority of the calls, but come on. That was not a penalty by number 55. That was bogus. And even with this, that roughing the passer, I cannot remember what number it was for Jackson Dart. That call was absolutely abysmal. But neither here nor there. Jackson Dart, he continued. I think he threw 2 pickable balls deep. He threw one in the middle of the field and one to the sideline. And then on the 3rd try, it was actually pretty good ball that he was thrown. And he got the call, pass interference, which y'all know I'm a referee. I call football, okay? So I see a lot of this stuff. I didn't love the call. It's one of those things, again, the emphasis nowadays when it comes to officiating is, does the defensive back get his head around to look at the football? He did not. He was kind of in the area of where the receiver was trying to make a play, and we had a pass interference call. I didn't love the call. Not in that situation where you're really bailing the team out, and Sean Payton let that official have it to his benefit, to be honest, because, pass interference in the end zone, they're going to get the ball on the 3-yard line, wherever the penalty was at, where they was marking, and you get the 15-yard penalty, so you're getting them half the distance of the goal line. So the Giants have to get 1 yard, essentially, and you have all those timeouts at your disposal, and you're able to get the ball back because you're going to have to get the ball back. Because the chances of the Giants scoring with Cam Scatterbo, and is it Scatterbo? I mean, I don't know. And Jackson Dart, the likability of them scoring a touchdown was very high. So, Sean Payton arguably, and Adam Schefter said it yesterday, he probably just did a smart thing. But even with that, Jackson Dart was able to accomplish the goal and to go down and score a touchdown. You cannot ask nothing for your rookie quarterback. And then, the question going into after the game, Brian Burns was not happy about it, leaving the game yesterday. And he was like, dropping 8, something around, they only rushed 3 passers. Yeah, you can't do it. You have all those pass rushers at your disposal. You have Kayvon Thibodeau, Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, and Sexy Dexter Lawrence. Okay. You got to get a pass rush on Bo Nix. This is where your pass rush is needed most. You have 30 seconds left in the game, roughly, if I remember from the top of my head. And the Broncos have no timeouts, if I do remember correctly as well. I think they had no timeouts. Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. And Bo Nix just goes down, gets 2 passes, and boom, the ball game is over. Granted, they were a couple of nice thrown deep balls, specifically the first one. I don't even think that throw was even going to that wide receiver. I can't even remember who caught it because I saw Cortland Sutton running right past the ball, and I was sitting there like, and the defensive back was draped over the wide receiver, and he just catches it perfectly right there. Everything just went wrong in that drive because you didn't have a pass rush, and Bo Nix was able to do that. Sit back in the pocket, call his girlfriend, and things of that nature, move the ball down the field, and kick the game-winning field goal. And this is where we're going to move on to the Broncos side of things. This game simply itself exemplified my problems when it comes to Bo Nix. He is easy to like. He throws a nice football, nice spiral, athletically gifted, big arm, etc., etc., etc. But he is wildly inconsistent. Wildly. But to his credit, and I forgot this little tip here, the Giants were up 26-8 with 5 minutes left. The idea of them coming back at that point in time was like slim to none. And Bo Nix, in his last 5 drives of the game, touchdown, field goal. I mean, it is literally the Bo Nix experience. And I discussed this with the Philadelphia Eagles a couple weeks ago. Bo Nix, and it's the thing about this Broncos team, and they are exciting to watch because of this aspect. You have the phenomenal defense, which they were pretty had yesterday, but it's one game. Your defense is going to have that day where they're not going to, be able to be the best that they can. It happens in the NFL, specifically when you got a rookie quarterback in Jackson Dart. You don't have a lot of tape on him. So, those type of games are liable to happen with your rookie quarterback. But you have Bo Nix, and what happened against Philly, he goes in and doesn't do nothing for the first half of the game, and in the last half against the Eagles, it's like a switch turns on. I don't know what it is, but it is simply the Bo Nix experience. And this is Bo Nix's stat line. He threw the ball 50 times. He had a horrific completion percentage. He was 25 from 50. What is that? From the top of my head, what is that? 54%? Absolutely abysmal. 279 yards. And he had a quarterback rating of 82 and a passer rating of 83, which is absolutely significantly high given his completion percentage. He threw 2 touchdowns, and I think he rushed for 2. So he had 4 touchdowns on the day. And they all came in basically the last 17, 16 minutes of the game. It is absolutely, well, sorry, in the last 15 minutes of the game because they didn't score until the fourth quarter. It's just absolutely phenomenal. Bo Nix, you know, and he and Michael Penix, and we're going to talk about Michael Penix later because I have more problems with him than what I do with Bo Nix because, you know, I think Bo Nix is the better quarterback and the better franchise quarterback. But no matter how ugly it may be, and it has been, Bo Nix and the Broncos find ways to win games. And Bo Nix, give credit to him, and this is a characteristic that you want in your quarterback. Even with nothing going your way all game, when the thick gets thin with the Eagles against the Philadelphia Eagles on the road and at home against the Giants, you were able in the clutch to make plays. What more can you ask? And a lot of people get caught up with the stats and the way things are, but guess what? And we're going to talk about with Philly next. These teams find out ways to win. Now, when they get into the playoffs, do I trust them to do this against better opponents? Absolutely not. You can do this stuff against the Giants, but when you face a Chiefs, a Colts, a Chargers, etc., you're not going to be able to pull that stunt there because you're going to have better, you're going to have better, well-ran teams all around than what you faced yesterday. And no matter how bad it's been, the Broncos find ways to win. When we can talk about the late games, the late game situations when it comes to Giants sending 3, missed extra points, all of that goes into perspective when we just talk about finding ways to win, not shooting yourself in the foot. And that is what the Giants do. Giants did, and the Broncos just found a way to win. There's nothing else I can really take away from that. It was a phenomenal game. If you're a Giants fan, you're absolutely mad at the world. And if you are a Denver Broncos fan, such as Shannon Sharp and everybody else, you're having an absolute best of days right now because you're at an all-time high. You're 5-2. The Chargers is pretty much flatlined, and you're number 1 in your division. When you can arguably say you've played C-tier football. You really have. Let's look at the schedule for the Broncos. You got Dallas, of course, coming up next week. You get to play Houston. You get to play the Raiders. You get to play Washington. You get to play the Raiders again. You get to play Jacksonville. The Broncos, their schedule is not the easiest, but it's not the worst. So the outlook for them making the playoffs in the future is looking very bright. And your 2 losses have come against pretty good teams in the Chargers and the Colts. So shout out to the Broncos and Bo Nix and that whole experiment. I like Bo Nix going forward in his career because I think he is going to be able to play more consistent. I know he's struggling to throw the deep ball right now, and he's been pretty accurate on short intermediate routes. So I think it's something. I love the marriage with Bo Nix and Sean Payton because I've seen how Sean Payton has been able to develop quarterbacks, and I trust Sean Payton to be able to develop Bo Nix. And of course they got a phenomenal defense. Let's not get started with that. But we're going to go ahead and move on. I don't want to harp on that game too long. I was on that game longer than the Cowboys game, I think. It was a good game, and it was very historic, and it was like how? Because I didn't get to watch that game in full, and I'm just sitting there telling myself like, how do you give up 33 points in one quarter? Giants fans, my gosh, dude. Oh God, I couldn't be me. Oh Lord. Do y'all know how mad I would have been if my Dallas Cowboys gave up 33 points in a quarter? I'd lost my mind. Literally. Oh, God. Woo! Couldn't be me. Could not be me. But I think this is a good learning experience for the Giants. But we're going to go ahead and move on. And we're going to talk about those dirty birds. Dirty birds. Y'all know I despise the Eagles. I was just preying on their downfall. I kept pretty close attention to this game. The 1 o'clock window was actually not that bad. The 1 o'clock window this week was way better than the 1 o'clock window last week. Jeez Louise, that 1 o'clock window was absolutely abysmal last week. But I was watching this game, keeping up with the Chiefs, Miami, and the Patriots. The 1 o'clock window was pretty good. And of course, I was watching this game. The Eagles and the Vikings. The Eagles going to win the game, whatever. I'm not going to be a hater. I'll hate in a minute. Let me go ahead and put my, analytical sports, broadcaster cap on. Let me analyze the game fairly and unbiased. Sadly. But, this is the first game in the last 22 games that Jalen Hurts threw for over 300 yards. Or was it 200 yards? I can't even remember. But he finally got 326 yards. Yay, Jalen Hurts! About freaking time, bud. Yeah. And that's I'm gonna go ahead. I don't know if I had this in my notes or not. I don't. So I'm gonna go ahead and just chunk this one in for free. Shout out to my pastor. He says that all the time in his sermons. I gotta give credit to Jalen Hurts. I don't want to do it. He's in my graphic. I don't like to give credit to Eagles players, but I gotta give credit to Jalen Hurts. Myself, ever since Jalen Hurts has been the starter in the NFL, and ever since he's been part of the Eagles, I've always said I don't think Jalen Hurts can win the game with his arm. Now, I think that he can win the game by making big plays with his arm. But I've never believed in Jalen Hurts not being able to win the game if he doesn't have a run game and going out there and throwing his way to a win. He was able to do it yesterday. Now, granted, let's put a little asterisk on this. And this is where I'm just going to go ahead and talk about the Vikings. Carson Wentz yesterday did all he could to lose this game. Let me repeat myself, and this is where my hater hat comes in. I know everybody's gloating about Jalen Hurts. He was 19 for 23. He finally threw for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He had a perfect passer rating. He had a 95 QBR. Yes. But if you honestly sit and watch this game, Carson Wentz did everything that he possibly could to lose this game. He was bad. If you look at his stat line, he was 26 for 42, 313 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. The 2 interceptions, one being a pick 6. So, stylistically, the Eagles only scored 3 offensive touchdowns. And the other one, I don't even know what he was throwing. He was rolling out to the right, threw it in a double coverage. Easy pick by the rookie corner of the Philadelphia Eagles. He was bad. He took a beating. I mean, he was only sacked twice. But, I mean, when I tell you, I want to know how many times he was even hit. Quarterback hits. Oh, okay. I'm going to have to go to the Eagles to figure out how many quarterback hits there was. Because he took a beating yesterday. Yeah. They hit Carson Wentz 8 times. And those 8 times, they were absolute shots. Carson Wentz was up just wincing, no pun intended. He was wincing and holding his shoulder. Carson Wentz is not healthy. I don't care what nobody says. Specifically yesterday, it looked like it was killing him to throw the ball at times. He's not healthy. And J.J. McCarthy cannot get on the field fast enough. Granted, he's not going to be a better option than Carson Wentz. Don't get me wrong. But, man, Carson Wentz did whatever he could to lose this game. I didn't put this as part of my segment, but was this more of an Eagles win or a Vikings loss? Absolutely was a Vikings loss. I mean, they were able to, at times, they were able to run the ball near the end of the game. I mean, Jordan Addison had 120 yards receiving. Justin Jefferson had 80 yards receiving. They were able to get the ball. They were able to throw the ball at will. I mean, they were at the Eagles side of the field so many times. Let's see. Let me go look at their red zone because they kicked so many field goals. I want to know how many field goals did they even kick. Okay. Red zone. Oh my gosh. The Vikings were 1 for 6 in the red zone. That is absolutely crap job. The Eagles were never in the red zone. They were in the red zone one time and didn't come away with points. Wow. That is absolutely bad. I was watching this game and I was sitting there like, dude, I know they were in the red zone so many times. And I put it in my notes. I'm like, dude, you got to capitalize on drives. And it cost them to lose this game. When you get in the red zone, we need touchdowns. You cannot win games kicking field goals. Shannon Sharp says it all the time. And you were 1 for 6 in the red zone. Eagles were penalized more. Oh my gosh. I didn't even know the stat was that bad. I was watching the game. I was like, dude, it feels like Minnesota is in the red zone so much and they could not come away with points. And it didn't even dawn on me, and it didn't come to realize that they were 1 for 6 in the red zone. Jesus Christ, that is absolutely abysmal. But this is my problem with Minnesota, and it has been all year. And, they're probably slapping themselves in the face, and everybody, the GM and everybody, and Kevin O'Connell and company, they're kind of like smacking themselves in the face because Minnesota has players. You got Jordan Addison, you have Justin Jefferson, you have Hawkinson at tight end. The O-line is not good, but that defense under Brian Flores, they're good. And I thought they did a good job yesterday against the Eagles. And they just didn't make plays late, which, we're going to discuss it later with the play to A.J. Brown and the deep balls that they gave up. But overall, they played a solid game, and they did good enough to win the game. They only gave up realistically 21 points to the Eagles offense. What more can you ask? With an offense with Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and Saquon Barkley. If you come up to me and say, you know what, Jayden, if I'm the coach of the Vikings, and if I'm any just random GM in the NFL, and anybody in sports media, you come up to me and like, Jayden, you know what? The Vikings are only going to give up 21 points offensively to the Eagles, and they have all those weapons at their disposal. And you're going to be like, I'm going to sit there and tell myself, oh, you know what? Vikings should win that game. What? You only gave up 21 points to that roster? Offensively? Vikings? No. Because Carson Wentz and company, mainly Carson Wentz, did whatever he did to lose that game yesterday. And it sucks. And Sam Darnold could have been in a Viking uniform. Granted, Sam Darnold, and I got to be one of those. I got to eat crud when it comes to Sam Darnold. He's turned out to be very good in Seattle. I didn't think he was going to be that good. I thought this was more of a Kevin O'Connell operation, but we may have been giving Kevin O'Connell way more credit and not giving enough to Sam Darnold, because Sam Darnold has been absolutely phenomenal. And if you would have plugged Sam Darnold in with this team and this roster, maybe not the offensive line, the Vikings would be probably what? They're 3-3, so that's 6 games. What could they have been so far? 4-2, 5-1. Because the games that they have lost is because your offense and QB play is absolutely abysmal. They're pretty much a QB away. And I don't know if J.J. McCarthy is going to be the answer, because he's got a lot of growing pains that he's got to endure. He has not looked good so far this year to start out, and he's already injury prone, just in the same conversation that we had earlier in the show when it comes to Jayden Daniels. But that is in the Minnesota. Now let me go ahead and get to Philly. And y'all Philly fans might hate me. I don't care. Your team still looks mediocre. Yes, Jayden, you've been critical of Jalen Hurts. He finally throws for 300 yards, and yet you still got some crap to say about the Eagles. Yes, because when I watched that game yesterday, this does not look like an Eagles team that is going to win a Super Bowl. They just don't. I don't think they do one thing well. If you want to go offensively, they've not been able to run the ball with Saquon Barkley. At all. Even yesterday. And you could probably figure, with the unit that the Vikings have, but Saquon Barkley had 2.4 yards to carry. And so far this season, we know that Jalen Hurts has not been able to throw the football well. This game was pretty much an anomaly. He finally was able to be pretty efficient throwing the ball, and he threw for a lot of yards. There weren't a lot of check down Charlies. He actually was pushing the ball down the field. I don't know if that was a product more of Kevin Patullo in the play calling, If I see this more in the future, well, maybe I can say that Philly does one thing well. But let's just go defensively. I felt like yesterday watching them defensively, Carson Wentz and company was able to do whatever they wanted. Granted, they were able to get, they were able to pressure the quarterback, but you cannot tell me if the Vikings have remotely any type of better quarterback play yesterday, they're walking away with a W. And the Eagles are walking away, what a Philly, they're walking away 4-3. And pretty much tied with the Dallas Cowboys I think they'll get, since they got the one extra win, they will get they're getting the tiebreaker over Dallas, but they're half a game ahead in the division. And they're not playing good football. They're looking relatively mediocre because I think offensively right now, at the moment, they don't do one thing well. And defensively, I don't think they're that good. They cannot get a consistent rush to the passer. And this is an anomaly as well with the quarterback hits because I think the Vikings have one of the worst O-lines in the league. So they were able to get to Carson Wentz at will. But when you get to ready to play all those higher up teams, they're not going to be able to get a consistent pass rush. I don't love their defensive backs outside of Cooper DeJean. I think Quinyon Mitchell is a little overrated. That's just me personally. I think Cooper DeJean is the way better corner. But I mean, he's not really. I mean, he's your slot corner guy. He's not going to be guarding your number one wide receiver. That's another thing. And I think linebacker play is pretty good. And I just don't think they're good defensively. So overall, when you put that under my microscope and my analysis of this roster and this football team at this present moment in week 7, I just don't think they're that good of a team. And granted, to the Eagles' credit, and you look across the NFC outside of the Buccaneers, what team looks really good right now? Not many. I don't think let me rephrase this. I'm probably being a little too harsh. The Eagles are good. They're not really, really good, like a Tampa Bay Buccaneers or like so far an Indianapolis Colts. They're pretty good. But I don't think they are this juggernaut like they were last year. If that's that's probably the point I should have started off with. Till I know a lot of you are saying like, oh, how impressive was the Eagles is my title, and I went on this whole soliloquy, and now you're Eagles fans. I'm probably pissed you off already, which is not hard to. Sorry, I don't need to be saying that word. The FCC will come and get me. So let me use a more PG term, please. If I know I'm probably ticked you off, y'all probably already clicked off my video. I'm sorry, but it's it's my honest thoughts, and I maybe should have put it this way. I just don't think the Eagles are the dominating team that they were last year, and they are the Super Bowl favorite that everybody makes them out to be. That's just my personal opinion, because when I watch this team, I don't love the O-line. They're not able to run the ball well. Jalen Hurts is under duress a lot under a good defensive line. And, y'all, excuse me, my nose is itching so bad. But I just don't think in the end they're going to be in the Super Bowl. I think their ceiling is the NFC Championship game, but I do not think they're getting to a Super Bowl this year. I may change my mind later, depending on how they continue to play throughout the season. But I got to give credit where credit is due. And we're going to end it off with this. I got to give credit where credit is due. And this is something that I can say about the Eagles and the reason why they're still considered a good team. Because Jalen Hurts and company, credit where it's due, find ways to win games. They do. When, when Jalen Hurts hasn't been able to throw the ball good throughout the season, he finds this game to where he knows it. Run game's not doing well. I'm going to have to throw the ball to win. And they put it in his hands late in the game to win. He missed the one ball to A.J. Brown, bad throw, and he comes back next play, throws a deep ball right in the hands of A.J. Brown for the win. And they were able to officially run a clock down and win the game. And he made throws on top of throws on top of throws yesterday. So I got to give credit where credit is due, But if you're asking me right now, in week 7 going into week 8, do I think the Eagles is like a favorite in the NFC to go to the Super Bowl? No. I think their ceiling right now is the NFC Championship game. And that is just my personal opinion on that. So those are like the games of the the early afternoon, late afternoon window. There's other games that I am going to get to. I'm going to talk about the Indianapolis Colts because they're very intriguing. They are a good watch. I can't talk some Packers. We're going to talk about Miami and New England. There's some good teams we're going to talk about. But I didn't, I weren't able to watch the games in full. I want to go back and watch some tape and come up with some discussions to talk about. But the one game on national television that was nationally televised, and I was watching, I wasn't super excited to watch this game at all because, you have the B team 49ers. They're not fully healthy. Like all their star players are relatively hurt outside of CMC. And actually, George Kittle was active in this game. I didn't even know that till like last minute because did he even catch a pass yesterday? I don't even know if George Kittle even. I think he caught a pass. Yeah. No. Oh no, he didn't catch a pass. Yeah. So I was like, I didn't even know George Kittle was playing there for a significant time. But you had this game and we have the Falcons, And oh well, nope. I screwed up the lower third. Oh boy. Let me go ahead and fix this. Hold on. But you had the oh god, canvas down. Yeah, I've had a problem with my thumbnails all day, y'all. My Canva has been acting up and my thumbnails have not been working efficiently like they're supposed to. So let's see if I can fix this right fast. Oh, it's not want to work. I need my lower third down there. I need my lower thirds down there. Sorry for the technical difficulties. All right, let's see now. Let me fix this right fast. There we go. All right, now we fixed it. All right, now back to the topic at hand. You had this game. We had the Falcons, and the whole storyline with the Falcons when it comes to, and I had it last week. Are they actually good, or because who was it the Falcons played? They played the Was it Commanders? No, they played the Bills. Yeah. They played at home. They were able to get a big win against the Bills, and I was sitting there like, okay. I remember going and talking about like, are the Falcons actually like as good as they are and seem to be? There was a big question mark, and the title of this segment was like, are the Niners and Falcons contenders? But I want to go ahead and just talk about the Niners, and then I'll get to the Falcons. Something I took away from this game. Can we go ahead and give Kyle Shanahan Coach of the Year? Like, what other coach in this league with this roster, all the injuries that has been at his disposal as the head coach of the 49ers? Star linebacker is out for the rest of the year in Fred Warner. Your star defensive edge, and these guys are first-team All-Pro players and Pro Bowlers, and Nick Bosa. They're out. Your starting quarterback is out, and Brock Purdy. Your franchise quarterback, and Brock Purdy. And then your receiving core with Brandon Ayuk. All these star players are injured right now. And the Niners are continuing to play efficient football with a depleted roster. This may be a pat on the back to John Lynch because he's a phenomenal GM and they are very good at identifying talent. But this has to do with Kyle Shanahan and his coaching. He's made Mac Jones look very serviceable as a backup. And if you ask me, I don't see a major difference between Mac Jones and Brock Purdy when I watch the two. I know that's probably kicking the 49ers in the, and we've talked about the whole thing with Mac Jones and how Kyle Shanahan wanted Mac Jones and all these other things that we can talk about, but I know the Niners are probably kicking themselves in the foot like, dude, we just paid Brock Purdy. What did they pay Brock Purdy? $50 million? Really? Was it? I can't remember what. I think it was roughly $200 million. And yeah, we got a guy, Mac Jones, who we're getting at a bargain, and he's out here balling. He's looking like Brock Purdy 2.0. I just think the only thing that Brock Purdy may do better is use his legs. He's a little more athletic. He may throw a more of an accurate ball, but he does not have the same arm strength and arm power that Mac Jones has. Mac Jones yesterday was 17 for 26, 152 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. He did not knock your socks off. but Mac Jones, and granted, the one interception he had, it was off the hands of the receiver, and it wasn't relatively Mac Jones's fault. Kyle Shanahan and company, well, not and company, Kyle Shanahan as an offensive coordinator and as a play caller, without your star quarterback and without your star receiver, you're able to take guys like Christian McCaffrey and everyone else, still be able to produce points and win a football game. Christian McCaffrey yesterday ran for 129 yards, had two rushing touchdowns, and he was able to catch 7 balls for 72 yards. He was your number 1 passer and your number 1 runner. Granted, is that like the best thing to say? Because we know how Christian McCaffrey is in argument the probably most run down running back in the last 10 years. Because when he was with Carolina, he got ran down, and with the 49ers in some instances, he has been getting run down. But it's not entirely his fault. I know that's not what Kyle Shanahan wants to do, because your roster is depleted. But it's crazy not to think what could have been with the 49ers. You're at what? The Niners are 5-2. What if you had Brandon Ayuk fully healthy? What if you had, I'm not even really going to say Brock Purdy, because I think Matt Jones has been just as good as Brock Purdy. So what if you had your full roster at your disposal? What if you still had Nick Bosa? What if you still had Fred Warner? What if you still, George Kittle for the whole season? What if you had Brandon Ayuk right now? Because who knows if Brandon Ayuk is going to be able to touch the field this year? You have all these question marks, and, you're starting off this well, and it's like, what could have been? I think the Niners are just well run across the board. Last night you had not one defensive star that I could name outside of Lenore Ryan at the cornerback position. I did not know nobody else on that defense yesterday, and they were able to get to the quarterback. Bryce Huff, yeah, I know Bryce Huff. Bryce Huff was able to get to the quarterback. They were able to get pressure yesterday. They were athletic, flying around, making plays. And this is just a testament to how well the Niners are ran and how good of a GM John Lynch is and able to find all this talent. And it's how good of a coach Kyle Shanahan is. Because it makes no sense that no ordinary coach can do what the Niners are doing right now. None. You cannot ask a lot of coaches in this league, maybe Andy Reid and maybe Sean McVay. But you can't tell me that you can go ask another coach, you know what? You're going to have your first team top 3 pass defensive end in the league in Nick Bosa. He's going to be out for the rest of the year with ACL. A top 3 linebacker in the league in Fred Warner. He's going to be out the rest of the year when he dislocated his ankle. You don't have your number 1 wide receiver in Brandon Ayuk. You lost Deebo Samuel in the offseason. George Kittle, he's been out the whole year with a hamstring injury. And you don't have your starting quarterback. And guess what? In the first 7 games of the season, you're going to be able to win. I want you to win 5 games out of the 7. If you ask any other coach that, besides maybe Sean McVay and Andy Reid, no other coach could do this. It is phenomenal what the 49ers are doing right now. And this is why I wanted to talk about them. And I haven't talked about them much. I think I've only talked about the 49ers once. And I talked about Nick Bosa's injury one time. And I wasn't even interested in watching the 49ers because your stars draw you to watch games. And that is the reason why I did not and have not really watched the 49ers, and plus they haven't played on live television. But I got to and I was ready to talk about them, I got to give credit where credit is due. The Niners are just they're a well-oiled machine. And it just sucks. What could have been. And this is the reason why I think they missed their window, because you've had all this talent for these past couple of years and you've not been able to capitalize it by winning a Super Bowl. And that is just going to haunt the 49ers front office and Kyle Shanahan and company for years to come. Now let's talk about the Falcons. And I had somebody comment on my video and they were like, do you know the definition? He had a Falcons logo as his YouTube profile. So obviously he was a Falcons fan. And he was like, I guess I was saying something about the Falcons. I can't remember what I was saying. I think I was saying that the Falcons weren't great. They were good. And I think the guy, he commented and was like, dude, do you know the difference between good and great? How you feeling today, my man? I didn't want to harp on the Falcons train. I thought the Falcons were good. you got Bijan Robinson, who I said is the best running back I've seen in a very long time since Christian McCaffrey and Todd Gurley and company and Derrick Henry. Like, he is just all across the board phenomenal. You have a good pass catcher in Drake London. I like Darnell Mooney as your number 2 guy, and of course Kyle Pitts is a good tight end, great tight end. He's been misused, but when he can make plays when you need to make plays. He's good. Offensive line is relatively decent. And I like what I've seen so far from the defense. The defense has been a top 5 unit in the NFL. But my problem with Atlanta, and I said it last week, I don't know if I'm going to fully trust the quarterback being consistent. And it was on display yesterday. Michael Penix yesterday was not good. He was the main reason and catalyst behind them losing. And there's a problem I had with, and I said it, and I said when we were talking about Bo Nix and the Broncos, I said I was going to get to it and talk about with Michael Penix. Michael Penix is not consistent enough for me right now. I'm more sold on Bo Nix because I like the marriage with Sean Payton and Bo Nix. I'm not totally sold on Michael Penix yet. I think Michael Penix has the ability, but I don't trust the coaching staff behind Michael Penix to be the reason why I think Michael Penix can be your franchise quarterback of the future. Statistically, Michael Penix was 21 for 38, 241 yards, 1 touchdown, no interception, but he was very careless. He had a quarterback rating of 30, and he had a passer rating of 83. That quarterback rating itself just showed you how well he did not play well. And, you had to hold the debacle there at the end of the first half with him not throwing the ball away and getting the intentional grounding call. And, it's just been the problem with Michael Penix in Atlanta so far this year. It's just the inconsistency at quarterback play. And, you're still able to get your wide receivers were pretty, Kyle Pitts got 7 catches. Drake London was pretty much silenced last night. But offensively, they just weren't good yesterday. They weren't able to get a run game going. And I just don't trust the Falcons. This is the reason why the Falcons weren't good last year, because a lot of people were harping on the roster and how good everything is, but I just don't think they are good, well managed. I think Raheem Morris has the ability to be a good coach. I just don't think he's a great coach. He's a defensive-minded head coach. And, I'm not wholly with Chris Collinsworth on the whole, you want an offensive coordinator type bit conversation. But this is ultimately a reason why, because I don't think their offense it's very Bijan Robinson reliant. And when you saw yesterday, if Bijan Robinson is not able to have a breakout game, the odds of the Falcons not winning a football game, the odds of the Falcons winning that football game that day is slim. Because they're just kind of like the Niners at this point, but to Niners' excuse is the Niners do not have anybody else to throw the ball to. If you give Kyle Shanahan, Kyle Pitts, and Drake London and Darnell Mooney, everybody's going to get a piece of the pie. Bijan Robinson, it feels like if Bijan Robinson doesn't go off, this team offensively is not well. And yesterday, Michael Penix took a beating. He got rattled, and there was bad game management. That final drive, it was absolutely abysmal. Michael Penix looked bad in that last drive. Like, absolutely bad. That 4th down throw there at the end, I know he was trying to make an excuse like, dude, you were supposed to be... That throw wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. And that's something else that I give Bo Nix credit for. I think if Bo Nix, he doesn't get rattled, he can throw under pressure. Michael Penix, I feel like if you give him a clean pocket and you let him play clean back there, he's going to dice you up. And that's the thing with a lot of rookie quarterbacks. And the same thing with Bryce Young. I tell people, I think Bryce Young can dice you up if you give him time. But if you get in his face, he can't make plays. He can't even really use his legs. He's not really that mobile. And that makes him a one-trick pony and being a pocket quarterback. And with that offensive line, I don't think it's the best offensive line. Unless if you had an Eagles offensive line, you're not going to have a good offense. And that's been my thing with the Falcons, and nobody wanted to hear me. And obviously the Falcons fan who commented on my video earlier last week, he didn't want to hear me as well. But ultimately, what's going to keep them in the race, and let's answer the question, are the Falcons contenders? What is going to keep them in the run is if their defense continues to play like they do, like they have this season, and being able to keep them in games. Because they single-handedly kept Atlanta in this game. Like, I know the Niners scored 20, but it's like they only gave up 13 points going into the final 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. Like, what more do you want a defense to do? You have all that star power on the offensive side of the ball, and yet you're still asking the defense to make all these plays for you, and they continue to give you these stops, and you just were not able to do anything remotely great on offense yesterday. Are the Falcons contenders? I think they can be contenders for a playoff run. For the playoffs. They're not a contender for the Super Bowl. Y'all Falcons fans can go ahead and hang that up. Like, it's not happening. They're not contending for no Super Bowl. Are they contenders to make the playoffs? Yes, because I think they will be fighting. I think the Buccaneers will go ahead and run away with the division. I have them winning the division. But if the Falcons can win, they got to get that 6-7 seed. They are not going to be able to get into the playoffs by winning the division. So I don't know their schedule. They got Miami. That's a win. You got to play the rest of the NFC East. Sorry, AFC East. I mean, their schedule's okay. It's not really that bad. But dropping this game to a 49ers team who was just depleted, it's really just heartbreaking and infuriating if I'm a Atlanta Falcons fan. But to answer the question, I know I didn't get it to the Niners. But are the Niners Super Bowl contenders? No. I just think the Niners, they're going to run out of steam towards the end of the season. They are already limping on one leg now, and we're only in week 7. We're not even halfway through the season yet, and the Niners are already on one leg. I don't know if they're going to try and make a trade or anything. I don't know. I hurt for the Niners because I think this season is going to end up a lost cause, but it's a good thing to see, though, how well Kyle Shanahan and company are good at coaching. And also with the defense. The defense looked phenomenal yesterday. The defense coordinator, God, I don't know the guy's name from the top of my head. Robert Saleh. Yeah. Robert Saleh, he showed why he was able to be successful on defense there with the Jets and why he was so good when he was defense coordinator for the Niners when they went on Super Bowl run back in 2019, 2020. Yeah, he had that defense looking good yesterday, and he had Michael Penix looking super uncomfortable. So I think the Niners, they can't make a Super Bowl run because they'll run out of steam. But, man, they can make a playoff run. They're going to be good enough to make a playoff run. I just think they're going to run out of steam. And it just really sucks because they are a team that is a testament of pretty much what if. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of today's show. It was kind of long. We've been on for an hour and 15 minutes. I kind of got lost. There was, football. The football was good yesterday, and we got a whole lot of things that I want to talk about in the future. But I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here and get my stuff prepped and ready for tomorrow. Hopefully, it won't be roughly till tomorrow night though, till I get to talk to you guys. But I want to talk about some other games in the future. If you enjoyed, do remember to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out my other videos as well. And Lord willing, I will see you all tomorrow. I love y'all so much. Peace, love, and positivity always. See ya.
It's not a game.